Hello everyone, Russ of Aquarimax here. Well, it happened. I finally have produced a captive-bred blue death-feigning beetle from egg all the way to adult. And let me tell you all about it. For the past month or so, every day I've been coming to the incubator, opening it up, checking the temperature and the humidity, and then I'll just check and see if there are any metamorphosed beetles in these containers. Well, yesterday I found one. It was right down here. It had managed to get into the humidity well, which was full of water. And so this beetle had been immersed in water for possibly a number of hours, and I thought it was dead. Now, granted, blue death-feigning beetles, well, maybe it was just playing dead, but it was immersed in water and had been for who knows how long. So I was really concerned that maybe it was dead. But I took it out, put it in a deli cup, and let it sit for a while. And I went back to my incubator and immediately began adjusting all of the other enclosures or the deli cups so that they could not allow the beetles to escape in the same way. I put mesh over everything, all of the lids in the enclosures or the deli cups in the incubator, and I also put mesh over the ventilation holes in all of the containers of larvae that are in a grow out phase right now. So that's not going to happen again. And after a couple of hours, I went to check on the beetle, and it was twitching. It wasn't moving very fast, but it was moving. It was a little worrisome that it was moving so slowly, but I was overjoyed that the beetle was alive, and it still is. As you can see, it's moving around. I've offered it food. I'm not sure when it's going to eat exactly. I'm really intrigued to see if the coloration was so dark just because it had been immersed in water, or if it's going to take time for it to develop naturally. Since this one got wet, it's going to take several days or maybe longer for it to develop the waxy coating that gives it the bluish color. But I'll be interested to see if other emergent beetles are a lighter color than this one, or if they all emerge at that color and gradually change to the lighter blue that we're familiar with. Very interesting. I should mention, if you haven't seen the rest of my process of breeding these beetles, the playlist is available and you can see everything from the setup of the original breeding enclosure with the adults to grow out of the larvae to when I put them in the incubator back in March of 2020. So, and this is that final culminating phase. I've learned a lot from this process. So in addition to what's in this playlist, there are a few other things that I'd like to pass on because I really encourage anyone with any interest in breeding blue death-feigning beetles to give it a try. And before I give you some details about that, I'd like to give a shout out to all our backers at Patreon. You helped us buy this incubator, and you do lots of other things that help keep our channel going and enable us to discover new things and share them with all of our viewers. So thank you. I'd also like to give a shout out to Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace. He has really supported this project in many different ways all along the way, and I couldn't have done it without you either, Peter, so thank you very much. I also have to give credit to Dean Ryder. He was the researcher who cracked the code on the proper temperature and humidity requirements in order to induce pupation in these beetles. 88 degrees Fahrenheit, or right around there, and 75 to 80% relative humidity. So I couldn't have done it without this information from Dean. Now, let's talk about a couple of things that I learned here. One is probably the most obvious, as I already kind of mentioned it, is that the enclosures or the deli cups for the larvae and the adults, and the pupae that are emerging as adults, need to be covered in such a way so that ventilation is possible, but they cannot escape. If you have a taller incubator than the one that I have, you may have containers that are tall enough that there's no way that they can climb out from the top of the substrate. But if you have any worries about that, make sure you cover the container. The incubator I have, I'm going to put a link in the description to the specific incubator that I have. I think it's great, but it's not tall enough to allow 32-ounce deli cups, for example, which would ensure that the beetles couldn't crawl out if I had the same amount of substrate in that I do now. I'm just using 16-ounce deli cups, and apparently they can get out fairly easily. So that's the first thing. Another thing that I've learned is that my beetle, when it emerged, it was a little on the small side. I mean, it's not ridiculously small. It's comparable to some of the wild-caught adults that I have in my breeding colony, but it's not on the larger side. So that is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's good in that I know that when I did start my larvae in the pupation process by putting them into the incubator, they probably were within the proper range of size. But maybe if I can let them go a little bit longer to get a little bit larger, that would be good too. Part of the problem is that balancing the size of the larvae and pupation time can be tricky. Basically, if you wait too long, the larvae are liable to die, and I did lose one or two because I was waiting for it to grow out a little bit longer and then it died, and that can happen. But at the same time, you don't want to have one that's too small. So I'm trying to figure out that balancing act. I've also started to improve the substrate. I think my beetle larvae will grow faster with a more nutrient-rich substrate. And thank you to Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace once again for some suggestions on how to do that. You can check out his video on how to do that, and I'll put a link so that you can check that out if you want to. One of the tricks that he mentioned was involved putting some oak wood or something like that, some rotting wood directly in a piece, like a chunk of it, in the container. So I've put that into my larval container with the adults so that they can begin feeding on that and so on. So nutrition of the substrate is another factor that I've learned about. And basically, those are the three things that I would maybe go back in time and change if I could. And I think I would end up with some faster larval grow out times, because this took a long time to do. This particular beetle was produced as an egg back last summer. It's been about a year, and I collected it as a larvae probably as a larva in the fall, and then I put it into the incubator. It was growing out over the winter when it's of course cooler and probably growing more slowly anyway. Put it into the incubator in late March. It is a possibility that this beetle actually was the one I put in the mid-May, but I won't know because I didn't have lids on the containers again for a while. So that is another reason why you need to keep the lids on the containers, because if one gets out, you don't know which container it came from. So live and learn, 20/20 hindsight. That has a new meaning now, doesn't it? Anyway, I am really excited about this new beetle, and I'm just kind of blathering on, which I don't usually do in my videos. So what I'll do now is say thank you for watching. I post videos every Wednesday and Friday, all on aquarium and vivarium pets. Please feel free to share, rate, comment, and if you haven't already,
subscribe.
And then click the bell icon so you don't miss my next video.